Well, everybody, this has been a challenge. I got to tell you, hey, Steve, if you're listening, go ahead and log back in on the original invite and we will get this thing going. That's very, very strange stuff happening, folks. I mean, this is weird. So apologize for it. Steve, just again, just log back in on the original invitation and we'll get you plugged in there. So hello, everybody. How you doing? You just got to remain calm. As the late John Candy used to say, you just got to go with the flow. So good to see you. There Steve is. Let me just invoke favor upon everybody as we get started. Yeah, they're listening. All right, let me get Steve going in here, folks, and you're going to enjoy this. I really have been able to talk to Steve, and I think it's you're going to enjoy it. So he's coming in here. Let's get him rocking and rolling. Good. Steve, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, there you be. So good to see you. Yeah, we had to work out the little critters in it.
Yeah. Right when we signed off, Locke got squirmy, so I put him back.
Oh, well, y'all were going to be able to meet. I like how you said that, Steve. His reptilian, and a fine specimen at that.
Yes. If you've seen my channel, I had for a first time an ability to have Locke hanging tight with me for a second in my hands. That's my iguana, which I have a small playlist on my iguana. So anyway, but he's over there. He'll be a distraction if he's going to be squirmy. So,
well, we'll just send him out good vibes.
He's.
By the way, I know someone wrote yesterday that they're looking for their cat. And if I recall correctly, it's been like for a very long time. So everyone just to stop and think if we can. I don't know what kind of cat, but you know what a cat is. Just frame it in your mind and let's see if we can send that kitty cat back home. And just, it doesn't take a lot. Just think of the cat and think about home. And hopefully that the two will be united. It's amazing how us humans, we love animals. We call them pets, but it's amazing how many pets, Steve, become family members.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I really loved my bearded dragons. I had 3 at one point. When my first one, my lady died, Sonia, she was like a daughter, as a little bearded dragon. I was really torn up and upset about it, Yeah.
How long have you had lizards, reptilians?
I've had them. That was always the pets that I had, and it was going back to 2009. Is when me and my now ex had picked up Sonia off of the internet, who was a Crimson Super Blood type of bearded dragon, which is like a nice orange coat.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, they're unique creatures. They're not your normal cat or dog, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
Well, Steve, I just want to welcome to the show. I don't know how I came across you, but in any case, I went over to your YouTube channel and then your Bitchute, and I said, well, here's an individual who has, I like your perspective on things and how you have a particular point of view, and a lot of the topics we discuss right here each Monday through Friday.
Yeah, indeed. Like I know that I've been commenting, a lot on your work going back to Ball and Lilith and Og. Those are the ones that really gripped me, and all those got me hooked on your show because you were delivering that, and it helped me in a lot of ways, which were exciting to me. And then I've been commenting all the time since, and you've liked a lot of them. And then I sent you that email about the Soul Trap and the Matrix, and then you asked me to come on.
Yeah. When you look at what we're involved in, by the way, those apocrypha books, whether it's the Liber Lilith or the, Book of Canaan and Lamech and Book of Og. To me, that was a fascinating insight. For me, it allowed the understanding that we're not alone. And I don't think they're all human either.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that was the most interesting to me was when it came around and you were going through the various giants who were the men of renown, and one of them was called Jotun or Jotun.
Yes.
And that is what you call a being of immense power. They don't necessarily have to be larger than us, but a being of immense power is a giant or a Jotun in Norse Indo-European mythology. And there's a whole thing about that. And the thing that makes it the most interesting is that debate about what's literal versus what's allegorical. And that's the part that got me really hyped up about it, because there was another giant that was the fire giant, but he didn't have a name that was Norse-like, but he was a fire giant from from a fire realm. And I'm just like, that's Jotunheim and Muspelheim right there, and those are considered to have various adversarial spirits to the Norse people and to the Norse gods over there. And it made me think about a lot of things. It hit some divine inspiration.
So, Steve, I love this conversation because one of the things I don't get to do many times, it's usually a single narrative. It's me looking into a camera, as you well know, and all the rest of us that do these podcasts. So the question I've been meditating on are, and in fact, I can say if you look at what Og taught us about the two different class, the Nephilim and the Rephaim, that were they human? Were they of a different origin? The question is, particularly, I think that they represent a species that we did call gods. But my question to you, how do you see in the spirit realm? Do you see all spirits as essence of spirit, or do you see them as the essence of what their being was in the physical?
Yeah, no, I think that most of it is essence of spirit. I think what we have is that there was something physically real that the myths kind of became the overlay for. So things were not literally like the mythological giants and ogres and trolls and what they meant in the mythologies and the Jungian archetypes and such. But these were actual like creatures that existed in a time when something was very different about our world. The gravity was likely very different. As somebody who loves Roger Mudfossil University,
Yeah.
I think that these were silica-based life forms, which is why they petrified into stone on the level that they did. And I think that they had certain aesthetics to what they were. Like perhaps there was a giant who liked to wield spears, had a crazy looking 8-legged horse and one eye. He wasn't Odin, but because the force, the vital force we call a god, Odin, it is an existing thing in the metaphysical universe within us, and as an actual, like imagine a psychic node that has a consciousness, right? This is a very different perspective of what we call God, because that is what the word God in Indo-European, Germanic, Old Norse means. It means a vital force, and it's not about worship. I'll tell you straight up, Odin and all the gods, they don't want us on our knees at all. That's not what those beings are about. And there's a very intimate relationship that we have between us and them. And they want to give us power, but we have to be like Thor and Mjolnir. We have to be worthy of it.
It's interesting. I recall there was a movie made by, I think it was a Swedish director. Anyway, I loved his format of film. He was making a kind of a docudrama fiction that the fact that the giants still live up in the Nordic regions of that part of the world.
That's interesting. Well,
In fact, I think it was, what was it called, folks? I mean, I'll have to think of it. If you can probably see it on Netflix, probably even on YouTube.
Yeah, let me know about that. But
Yeah.
no, I think so. I think that there are some of those kinds of giants that still live. I mean, we know like even the Bible affirms it with that allusion to the fact that King Og survived the flood, that Goliath survived the flood, or was a descendant of perhaps a very very small tribe of giants that survived the flood, so on and so forth. Then it's a question of whether the flood was regional or global. What were the giants literally everywhere? What was Pangea like? Because the way I see it is, we had the flood, then we had this period of recovery time, and then the ice age set in, and there's way more years that were not really being honestly accounted for if we take the Bible literally, and our only like perception of time is looking at the age. Like, okay, Noah lived 600 years, so we assume, okay, this is 600 years, da, da, da. And then eventually the theologians said, well, the Bible says that the earth is 10,000 years old, or whatever, right? And that's where we get these numbers. But the truth is that there's a history before earth was earth, which is where Genesis 1 begins. Genesis 1 is much longer than just like this one Adam guy's like early life. And then you get into Genesis 2 when the archons show up. And that's when you stop hearing as much about the Elohim and more about Yahweh in particular, which you get that sense when you read the Hebrew translation that's more direct.
Well, my position on that, I think that the Bible is a book of misinformation. I don't take it literally, but it's interesting because there are aspects, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where we step into where, whoever wrote that, whether it was Mosi, the magician, or whether it was, someone coming from Mesopotamia. The natural state of things is darkness, number one. The God of the Bible comes out of darkness. In the beginning was God. It wasn't until God spoke light that the artificialness of the reality came into the scene. And in my years of theological study, one of the things that I recognized back in, I was at Rhema Bible College, and it became very clear to me that something was wrong here, particularly between Genesis 1:26 and Genesis 2:9, that this could not have been the same planet, could not have been the same race of beings, inasmuch as we conclude in Genesis 1, it says that God found no fault in the male or female, and he never named them. They were called the 6-day people. There was a book, Gary Wayne wrote a book on that called the 6-day people. And suddenly we have this cataclysm that takes place in Genesis, which the first 3 verses of Genesis 2 should have been the ending of Genesis 1. There was a cataclysm, and because in Genesis 2:4, it says that the earth had no vegetation, that the land was barren, and it said as well in Genesis 2:5, there was no man to till the ground.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. There's quite the flip, because in Genesis 1, creation is serving man, but then in Genesis 2, man is supposed to serve creation, and it is making that as a distinct difference.
I think my theory is, and you're right, then we get these, I don't know if they were the Elohim. I don't know. I contend, and this is just my thesis on this, that what people are worshiping today is still Enki. I contend Abram, when he left Ur of the Chaldees, which was the central capital of Sumer, Abram's family, we've traced this back, they worshipped Inanna, the moon goddess. They made trinklets at the worship of the temple. So here's Abram moving and sojourning out, and he meets this unknown God. This God is a blood God. This God requires that blood be spilt in order for it to be engaged. And I contend if Abram knew what he knew of Enki, Enyel, Inanna, Anu, El, I don't believe that this was Jehovah. I don't believe that this was Yahweh. It's just my contention.
Right. That's very possible, because there's so often there seems to be, because the Bible, one of the biggest problems the Bible has is that, especially with Genesis and Exodus, before there's really, like, the Hebrew people having, their kingdom of Israel, where it's just them and Yahweh and the host of angels. It's like, okay, they're sitting amongst the Babylonians and talking about life in Sumeria or whatever. It's just like they're not naming any of these effing gods. Like, none of these gods are named. But what's really funny is that I've looked at the translation. The word for I, like to say I am hungry or whatever. The word for I in Hebrew is pronounced Enki, which is
amazing, isn't it?
Which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, exactly. And then Exodus, okay, no mention of Ra, Osiris, Set, Amenhotep, Thoth. Like the Bible, like it's like, you shall not even discuss the other gods that had everything to do with your issues for some strange reason.
Yeah, here you have Moses, which really literally translates magician.
Mhm.
If his lineage really was what it will say, there's a lot of debate whether he actually lived or not, but I contend that if he did, you're right. He could not have replaced the gods of his youth, the gods of his fathers, which was Pharaoh. Amenhotep. I mean, you know, unfortunately, I will say this: Cecil B. DeMille still haunts us, because that's what most people think of Exodus, as Charleston Heston leading the Hebrews out.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's still like, that's still all the basic ways that the Bible is understood. And a lot of conspiracy theorists in the Christian world, they get into a kind of like biblical mysticism, which is such a child's play kind of level of understanding things, that it's almost insulting to the intelligence once you start getting into a deeper dive about it.
Yeah, I contend that Jesus Christ is not a Christian, never was.
Yeah.
Allah is not a Muslim, and Buddha is not a Hindu. I mean, you think about it, if these characters lived, they despised religion, they despised the hypocrisy of it. And here we live today, as you mentioned, the Bible is, the people think that most, and my contention is that people have no idea what the Bible actually is. That if you look at it, none of the books exist. We have none of the books. On top of that, if you look at the characters responsible for what's out there today, these were very bad men. Very bad men. But yet, you see what I would only say this, 1/3 of the world that is in this spell, that they really think that this is a literal book. I wrote this today to someone. It's the synchronicity, Steve, are amazing here, because you weren't aware of this. And I wrote to him and I said, here's the problem with, they found a scroll of a Roman soldier who purportedly was at the crucifixion. And this scroll has just been recently found. And this soldier is giving the description of this crucifixion. The soldier says, the scroll, that whatever was up on that cross was not human. He goes on to say some other things. Now, it was very interesting when I was listening to this, but here was my problem. When they said the soldier made reference to this person being crucified as Jesus,
Mm.
And I wrote to the individual and I said, here's the problem with that. The name Jesus didn't exist then. And if this indeed was from the first century of an eyewitness account, I said, here's my other problem. So Vespasian never wrote about any crucifixion, state execution in Judea. Titus is the only one that has it in the record that there were 3 people that were in fact crucified, but that was in the year 67 AD. Detailed records of that. We don't have Josephus, who was a traitor, and Josephus' first name, he took on his master's name, which was Vespasian Flavian, and his name is known as Flavian Josephus. Nothing written about this. We have nothing from Philo. So I said, here's the problem. And here's what most people don't know. There's a book called Searching for the Cross. The guy did this study. Herod was known. The reason why the Romans wanted Judea was because Herod's kingdom, his subjects, were the most educated subjects in the Roman Empire besides Rome itself. King Herod made the decree that every child from the age of 7 to 17 went to school. They knew how to read. They knew how to write. There were artists. There were engineers. Caesarea, the seventh wonder of the world. The engineering on that, we still couldn't match it today. So here's my whole thing, and Stephen, I got off on a tyrant, and I apologize, is that
it's okay.
This supposed event that was well attended, there is not one tiblet of a parchment, a scroll, a tablet of the people of Jerusalem who wrote about this. There was not one parchment of any depiction, drawing of any of this.
Right. Well, so, one of the things that we know for sure within the continuity of the Gospels is that what happens? Pilate washes his hands, and basically he's illegally executed. He's effectively murdered, is the way the story goes. The Roman law was not executed here, but because there was an angry mob, that's what happened. And his name was not Jesus, because as he's referred to in the Aramaic original transcription is Iuzus, which means hail Zeus.
So, here's the other
God. Yeah, he's the son of Zeus.
He's the son of Zeus. In fact, Titus made the proclamation before the Roman Senate that his father, who was Caesar, should be elevated to the title of emperor, God. And Titus, when that happened, Titus boldly decreed, as he raided the temple, that he was the Son of God. They're the ones who wrote the Gospels. The Gospel of Mark was never written by anyone named Mark. It was an outline by James. That's the anyway. Exciting topic. I love this because it's the mind coitus of our history. It's like Roger over at Mud Fossil University has shown. There are gaps in our history that we can't account for.
Oh, they're immense. They're absolutely immense. And like most of it, you're not going to find unless you've got to be an actual student of the work. But then you've really got to do that deep intuitive dive, right? A lot of people are putting it all together because they're going into their own personal blood code genetics, and they're pulling out from their ancestors. And I'm trying to develop that in my own right, because I've got some interesting stuff in the way my chart works. My Vedic chart in particular, a lot of Ketu rule aspects, which is the ancestors, which is our old karma. My moon sits in the Mula Nakshatra, so my head is aligned with galactic center, which explains why I think more deeply about things than other people. I used to just get mad about it and say, like, why don't you care? Oh, it's because it's not in your chart to care, and I need to stop being a dick. So I had to learn to stop being a dick about that kind of thing, because I had to accept that I am special, and they're special anyway, whether they're conscious of it or not.
I love you, man. I mean, just lay it right out there. So, you're younger than I am. So how does your generation respond? I mean, because quite frankly, as you said, the vast majority of people just don't care. And yeah, I mean, you're into Veda astrology, right?
I'm into the Vedic and the Western. Like the Vedic came to me much more recently, and it's been interesting the way I've worked with both of those.
Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, you see, it's interesting because I looked at it. It's 23.4 degrees sidereal is what Vedic is. So that's almost 24 you round up. And I think about the idea of the Indo-European migration and the idea that our ancestors, came from towards, yes, the Middle East, and that we broke off as a tribe and we were very, very close to India. And that a lot of the Norse gods and the Gaelic gods are, in a very real sense, just like the Hindus have aspects of their gods, that these were actually the same kind of aspects. And you can follow that, like what was Jesus? I use Zeus. Hail Zeus. Zeus is Jupiter. We all understand this, astrologically speaking. Who else
Jupiter is in the Vatican, by the way, the seat of Jupiter.
That's right. Jupiter is also the planet associated with Tyr, who is the god of truth and justice and right action. He's directly associated with the North Pole star, true north, north node of the moon. Yeah, these are all like things that connect with Tyr, but especially that truth and justice with Jupiter, because that's that spiritual growth. That's that spiritual growth that comes with it. Because Tyr is two, which is dew, and dew is the derivative for Jupiter. The etymology is, I'm still in the study of the etymology, but I'm knowing enough to speak on these levels. And by the way, I think you're gonna love this, Wayne. I was listening to your show yesterday. Have you that blue ball that you saw in your dream?
It's a spear. Yeah.
It's a sphere. Have you figured out much about that yet since last night?
I had the worst night of sleep. No. The answer to your question, no.
All right. Here it is, because I intuitively knew it immediately, and I said, if Wayne hasn't figured this out, I think I'm going to blow his mind. I'm just going to say one word, and you're off to the races. And Miss Trina's right about what you do, because I did the same thing. Venus. You've been paged by Venus. The goddess is wanting to have a conversation with you.
Now that resonates. I just heard. Please go on.
Yes, I had a dream a couple weeks ago where I was in some sort of it was some sort of tactical mission. Like I was chasing somebody or I was running from somebody. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. And I'm in this big like office-ish building, and then I turn this big corner into this hallway, and then there's Venus as this massive blue like like slow turning vortex on its orbit, or on its axis, and it's pulsing a little bit. And I just look at it, and I knew it was Venus in my dream immediately. But that was it. It was just doing that. And then shortly after that, I woke up, and I said, okay, wow. I think somebody just paged me. I think the goddess just paged me. So I went into meditation and connected with that. And so,
excellent.
That's kind of that intuitive link, tapping into divine feminine. So when I go to Venus, my two goddesses that are in my conscious awareness with Venus is Freya, who is you were talking about that lost cat. Freya is a goddess of cats. Her chariot is pulled by two cats.
Yes.
People think that they're lynxes because big predatory cats are not indigenous to Europe, but the lynx is kind of there. And these are gods, so they're going to be like He-Man kind of cats anyway. Um, so that and Athena. I get that Athena vibe off of Venus as well, and there's kind of this message about the true warrior goddess, divine feminine, is beginning to come forward, and to carry that and to be a part of like complementing that as a guy is part of my message from Venus.
Very interesting. Interesting in as much that, what was it? 2 nights ago, when it was finally clear here, Venus in the nighttime sky is just extraordinary luminous. I think it's now reaching an 8 on the luminosity scale for Venus, and it's very bright. This makes sense. Okay, I'm going to meditate on this. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Now, I really, really find that interesting. Thank you. Thank you. So let's continue. So have you found astrology as a means to help connect to the spirit realm? Does it help you to identify yourself as that place of center of being?
Yeah. Like for me, I look at the astrology as part of your inner world, like Manly P. Hall talks about the inner life, and so it makes sense. Like I freak out about things like how slow it takes me to develop success and abundance, like working with a career that brings income and stuff like that. But then I look and I realize like, well, I got like Jupiter retrograde in my chart, and it's aligned with with my north node, and it's in Leo. Like, so that Jupiter retrograde means that your development, your growth and development is slowed down. You're meant to take a longer path on it. It's meant to be more of a reflective path, because you've got that retrograde motion occurring at the time of it. So and my Neptune is retrograde as well, and and that one also has a connection to abundance. So I'm just I'm supposed to be blessed later in life, and I'm pushing 40 now, but I'm not worried about it. I'm just living fearlessly.
That's the way to do it, my friend. I tell people all the time, if you can reconcile the fact that death is not actually death, it's actually birth. You're already dead. You're in a realm of death. So it's amazing how we cling to want to be into death. But I do agree with you. I think you're on the right path. The universe is not in lack.
That's right.
It has overabundance.
It does. Overpopulation is a lie. I mean, you can go out and see the vast wild lands. Like you can see like you drive across like the Midwest for a hot second, and you look at a field that's not even being used for farming, and you're just like, a large town. You could put a large town in that couple of square miles right there, and it ain't going to hurt the environment one iota, and it's going to take pressure off of the other local metropolises. But we don't do things that way, because we're trying to deny our place on the earth, and we're using the bad example of those that are more reckless as to say, like, because they're reckless, we can't trust you, and we have to project that idea that you're going to destroy the earth. And the next thing you know, the government's passing stupid laws about water collection.
It's odd you're saying that. I was literally getting ready for this, and the thought hit me. The average IQ is now getting down to near 100. Some say it's now below 95. And we've got politicians then that are basically at low IQ, and they're making laws. And they're stupid laws. I mean, according to one presidential candidate, it doesn't take an IQ to be a farmer, apparently. Anyone can do it.
Oh, right. Yeah. What is he? And I know, and who said that? A big city guy.
I'm going,
Figure.
what? What?
You know, like, and that's one of the things that I see. One of the things that I was able to pick out of the Norse myths is that back in the day, there was the very first war. It was the war between the sky gods and the earth gods. Now, this is allegorical. This is not based on anything like King Og or anything like that. But this is about a war going on in the hearts between like the sky gods, who are timeless entities. They where the Vanir, the earth gods, like Freya and Frey, her brother, they're like nature gods, and they you know, they rule over forests and rivers and deer and things like that, where the sky gods rule over grand concepts like truth, justice, wisdom, awareness, right? Things that are concepts in timelessness. And in that timelessness, there's this ever, you know, there's that expansion principle. So like the you know, when man is in their Aesir mind thinking, and which would be, back in the day, we would call them Asatru, which meant that you were loyal to the Aesir gods and you didn't care much for the Vanir gods. You were about building big castles and infrastructure kind of things, and putting together governments, which the Old Norse called things. A thing was kind of like a court gathering of leadership to make decisions about the people. And so the Aesir Vanir War was in part about that, or at least was at stake in it. And the Aesir won that war and subjugated the Vanir. And they've been trying to work out their differences ever since. And we see that played out on the world stage, where industry and cities expand at the expense of the agricultural world and the wildlands and so on and so forth. And this is the ebb and flow between what man is fully capable of versus what man is supposed to do to love and honor this environment, because there are gods here and there are gods up there.
Do you think the gods are still here?
Oh yeah, the gods are with us. The gods are with us every day. These particular things, yeah, they don't go away. We can reject them for the rest of our lives, and there's consequences to that, because those gods, they're within us in the first place. The reason
Interesting concept.
Yeah, the reason why we have these problems is that we had been separate. We had separated during the Viking Age and a little bit before the Viking Age, as just part of the consequences of the fall from our greater animist understanding of the universe. We were supposed to take in all the gods to know their place. You venerate Heimdall, for instance, whom, if you saw the movies, he's the Black Viking, which is kind of funny, almost gaslighting, because he's called the White God. It's got nothing to do with race, but it's just gaslighting because Hollywood's racist. But Isla Elba is a kick-ass actor, so I love the role. So Heimdall, he's the god of conscious awareness. It's just like, you know, that's like if you're trying to tap into making sure you've heard everything that around you, seen everything, smelled, taste, touched. Heimdall, he's all these senses, and his role is to guard Asgard. And Asgard is the divine heavens where the gods work. And then this is your higher mind. This is where your higher mind is. And then there's and then you've got gods like Njord, who's basically the earth as well as a god of the sea, is actually a goddess, because Njord is also, I think her name's Besla, which was who Odin had an affair with her to create Thor.
I didn't know. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And Besla's a giant, by the way. There are good giants in Norse mythology too, right? It's not about them being these evil spirits, although the myths do kind of show Thor often going what seems overboard on certain giants when you look at it, because he's always in the east fighting the giants for some reason. I think it's interesting that he's always in the east, because if you go east of Europe, you're getting towards the Middle East, and so I think that there was a protector that actually existed, who then those qualities of Thor got projected upon, perhaps a good man of renown who was there to stop the actual like Nephilim Raphaim from coming into Europe during the time where all that mattered. And Jotun was one of the giants who was a bad guy that probably would have been at odds with Thor. And because I'm just saying, like, that King Og War, it just seems like all the evil giants came through
All around the world, apparently, too.
all around the world. Yeah, you see, those dark ones, right? Those dark ones are the key, in my opinion, and they're still here. And I think I know what they are now.
Well, someone wanted to know, what is your thoughts on AI? And I'm curious if, keep your thought, let's go for the first one first. What's your thought on the dark ones?
I think the dark ones are egregores.
Interesting. I've heard that term. That's just, everyone else going, what?
They are the demon type that is of our own manifestation. They latch on, they manifest out of our desires, and they corrupt them. Like I've had to wrestle with egregores, just like, in my pursuits of doing things in networking and bringing people together and trying to make a big deal out of it, because I'm trying to boost myself up, and then I start being a little too imposing, and then I do rude things, and then I step back and say, like, why did I do that? That's really not who I am, but I really got obsessed with this thing I believe I needed to do, and it got me into way more trouble than I liked. And then my friend, I think you saw the video. It's on there. I mentioned Bruce McDonald.
I listened to the interview you two guys had. I'm going to get Bruce back on.
Yeah, he wanted to hop on a lark, which was really kind of him. We know each other from Rev Radio, because we didn't discuss this in the beginning. I used to be a host on Revolution .radio for many years, which is where a lot of this I was developing it at the same time and sharing some of it while I was doing on the air stuff. And so big shout out to Bruce, and I never met John Edmonds, but big shout out to John Edmonds. Amazing book. And I love those guys to death.
Yeah, I'll tell you, both John and Bruce are just two phenomenal guys. And what an experience. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brings the whole idea. There's a movie out there I tell people to watch, Alien Code. It'll help explain maybe some things that at a different level. So that's interesting, because there is a theory out there that says every human and every thought actually takes on a life, because you give thought to it.
Yes.
And if you concentrate long enough, the manifestation will come through.
Yeah. There's rules, because like the law of manifestation is missing a lot of component parts. And of course I don't have great abundance in my life yet, so I can't be the guy who talks to you about that kind of manifestation. But I do know that I've tried the basics of manifestation, like the way that you get from the mainstream kind of secret level of it, and it just there's just a whole lot missing, and you'll end up wasting a whole lot of time because they put the time stamp on it, so that way you don't have to think more about the more work that you have to do. The New Age movement is very into the energy work and things like that, which is beautiful. I meditate and I do qigong and everything, but we've really shied away from our ancestral traditions, which involves making ritual and working alchemy and magic. And and if we are, we're still avoiding our ancestors, and we think we have to go to China or something and look at the Chinese mysticism, the Hindu mysticism, or whatever, because they've suppressed that there's ancient magical traditions of the Indo-Europeans, which come from a very, very good place and is there to serve us. And it is part of our inheritance. We are, white people are the fire tribe of the Hopi legends. We're the men of the North, right? And so we have elemental fire powers that we can work with and complement. So if you're in the fire tribe, you're fanning your flames when you're doing Eastern practices like Qigong, which is why we like it so much, because we're putting the air into the bellows of our flame. And then we go and we look at earth magic to contain that fire in its vessel. And then we use water magic because we're regulating that flame, or we are putting it to our flame to boil it. And that's where you get magic from Africa.
Interesting. I like the perspective on that. I contend that as I study more and more, that Gnosticism, that was really we call it paganism, between let's say the last century to probably the 2nd century AD, that what we had outside the Hebrew mysticism, and most people are not aware of this, but I contend that what today is called Christianity really started from witchcraft, really started with covens. They practiced magic. They practiced magic of the earth. They practiced magic of the air. And in fact, if you read much of the writings of John was what we would call a witch or a magician, a sorcerer. And I think that that's where, unfortunately, the book of Revelation has been turned around to a pre-programmed. It was not the original intent. My point is this, is that the question I think will be put out there: can you be a witch and still be a Christian?
Right. I know that the church allowed it for some
Yeah, they
time.
did for hundreds of years.
Yeah. It was around the time that they decided they were going to publish the Malleus Maleficarum, which is called the witch hammer, the hex hammer, which was this is your, like, that's your fascism 101 study book. If you want to know, how to boot stomp, you just take the templates and you just change witch to whatever the F you're boot stomping. And it's all the same application and psychological principle. It's a very, very nefarious book. And of course they had to order it from the Germans, because the Germans, of course.
Of course. I mean, oh man,
I'm part French, so I am a Germanic tribe. So yeah. I still take offense to that.
With the name of Steiger going, when I was a kid,
right.
It was very well known. I still remember this getting teased in the 1st grade because World War II was still very much real. I mean, and my family in Germany, actually, distant relative, was assigned to profile Patton. Colonel von Steiger. Anyway.
Interesting.
And of course, another distant relative with the Liber Lilith. Unfortunately for Nicholas, he went insane. But anyway.
Yeah, there are definitely infiltrators who are good guys amongst the Catholic Church. This is because when the Romans were first coming around during their time as pagans, they had to absorb the Minoans and the Etruscans and the Villanovans and other pre-Roman pagan cultures, and so they did it to their own, and they did it to their own before the Abrahamic
Oh yeah.
system came in, right? So there are, there are Catholic practitioners that on the down low are actually Strega witch.
Well, that goes all the way back to Alexander the Great. He with the Grecian mindset was, don't fight these people's gods, just incorporate them with the family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there were a couple of it's a quality of Alexander the Great that I really really liked. It's where somehow he figured out how to conquer you, but then like to mostly let you have your situation.
No one has ever tried to channel him, and I often wonder, these people have that gift. Those are the minds I would like to talk to. I mean, this man he would be considered a genius today. He was a statistician, a logician that was off the scale, and he understood about religion.
Yeah, indeed, indeed he did.
Yeah. Anyway, it's worthy of a study. It really is. He was a fascinating young man, and I think he had ET help. That's just me. I mean, how do you take the giant elephants that they had today and go through the Himalayas?
Yeah. It's there could be all the, it's either aliens or just some sort of secret that we didn't know. Perhaps it was perhaps they were lying to us about what that part of the Himalayas was actually like back then. It's real interesting the way all that works out.
Well, we could take Admiral Byrd's theory that it's the masters that live in the inner earth.
Right. There's that, and of course I have a big problem with how that turned out. I wonder if you remember the comment I left
saw that.
After that one.
Folks, that's what it's about. We have to have fun about this.
Oh no, we absolutely do. We're not living in on a prison planet. We are living in a planet that's being squatted by some psychopaths, and we haven't reached critical mass where everybody is in agreement and says, can we kick them out? So we're dealing with a whole lot, and so there's aspects that within reason we avoid it, right? We avoid as many places that project these problems as they can, and at the same time we have great empathy for what's happening. It was very moving, the South African interview.
Michelle, yes.
You did. Yeah. I was working on Rev Radio with a few people talking about the South Africa thing a little bit while ago, when it was even more prevalent. And God, that's an awful crime. And there's an animist tradition in Africa that I've lightly looked at. And when the Africans like start getting a hold of what their gods were, and how their people had their strength and way of life, that's going to be some serious water magic that's going to be released on the earth in a very, very healing way.
There is a thought in Kabbalism that they say that there were, when the Council of 12 moved into this region of space, and this is my vernacular to theirs,
okay,
that the 10 gods divided the earth up. And to this day, those same 10 gods are there. And they brought out very clearly that if you look at Yaldabaoth, or Yahweh, Yahweh's territory was very small and constricted, and he was never outside those boundaries.
Right.
And I agree with you on the thing with Africa. My heart, it's very difficult to talk about that, but yeah.
But yeah, beforehand, like henotheism is what the Hebrews and Yahweh originally were. Even though the Bible was written in such a way where it's even struck out the names of these gods, the way it's all written there in the Old Testament, you can see it about, okay, he says you can have no other gods before me. which first off implies that there are other gods.
Yeah.
You know, so it's henotheism. That's what that statement is. That is what henotheism is that statement.
I think he said he was a jealous God too, and I
Yes,
remember
exactly. Exactly. All those qualities that now make sense thanks to the Liber of Lilith, which I think is which is not like, you know, like the Great Beginning video that I asked you to watch. That is an overarching animist idea that's running through my head, and I've already written out 2 more parts. I just haven't decided to record them yet and then put together the slide the way it's going to turn out. So there's a little bit of a continuation of that will
excellent
eventually come.
She just visited me the other day. I mean, and see, that's the real dichotomy with myself, is that energy I know is real. I mean, I've experienced it, and there's no denying it.
Yeah, no, I do believe Lilith is real. I'm really on the fence because it's Samael Lilith also. You know, like I'm on the fence about how much I can want to sit there and say like because there are other goddesses.
Oh, there are.
Like is because if she is also semi, I mean she's then also the Archon, and it's like, is she really separate? Like, you know, like I almost think about Loki. Loki is actually a dual gendered god. Otherwise, Loki couldn't have been the mother of certain monsters. Some of them are not evil, because that's the funky thing about Loki, is that there are things that are good that come from Loki, but Loki himself is not, because Loki is luck. And we're running out of time. There's a whole lot on Loki, but
we're going to have you back. I mean, listen, this has been a fabulous conversation, and Steve, you're a fascinating mind. Just have great respect for minds that are not constrained by tradition or regiment.
Thank you.
And folks, go over and subscribe to this young man. This is the type of people we want in our community. His essence adds to the knowledge, and you should be at least 1,000 to 10,000. That's just my attitude. So
I'd love that if I could live stream from my phone. I'm behind the wheel all the time as an Uber driver, so you know I can't live stream from my phone until that happens.
Well, we're going to help you get there. We're working with David Barry, and I know with Trina, and with Milky Way. Folks, we're a community here, and we could easily get these channels up here, and I'd love to see these people. They're linked below. I left the links to both your YouTube and your Bitchute as well.
Thank you. Yeah. My BitChute's only got like 14 subs at current, but it's BitChute, so I understand.
Well, but listen, it's a good alternative. I actually have a BitChute channel. I just haven't promoted it yet, so I think that this is important.
Yeah, absolutely. May I plug real quick that I
Sure.
do? We didn't have time. I wanted to give you a reading, but I do a rune and tarot hybrid system, and as far as I know, I think I'm the only guy that does that, where I can do a reading where I look at a rune and a tarot in the placement together, and I extract a more multi-dimensional reading that comes out of that, and I offer that service. Zerilath at freedomslips.com.
Excellent. I'll tell you, we'll have you back on maybe even next week. I think that'd be an excellent opportunity for people to see that. That's very interesting.
I'd love that anytime.
Okay. All right. And I'll be more than happy to come on your channel and help promote you, get you out there. This is just great.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we can work on something. Didn't even.
Yeah. Let's look at that.
All right.
All right, folks, listen, we didn't go over because we didn't start until 7 minutes after. So you see, we're being very good stewards of your time. But seriously, folks.
That's positive Saturn energy.
Exactly. I love it that this group, they actually imbue this. It just flows out. So, Steve, you want to take us out and, tell us what you have to say, and we'll wrap it up there.
All right. Listen, everybody, man, what do you say? Listen, infinite blessings to everybody. I appreciate this being so interesting. It was always hard, even when I was doing Rev Radio, for me to gauge like how how many people and how much of them really like were into what I was talking about. I always felt like I was just crying in the wilderness. And it feels good to have this kind of recognition from outside of that universe that I developed out of Revolution Radio. I don't work with them right now, but I love them and I wish them all the best. And I thank you so much, Wayne, and just check out my stuff. And I don't know what to say. That's it. Thank you.
Well, you're going to be back on, Steve. You've got a gift, and we'll get you there. And that's what it's about, folks.
Okay.
All right, stay on, Steve. And folks, thank you. See you tomorrow at the same time. Got lots of other things coming. So, but thank you for joining us in this hour. Y'all are beautiful. Love you, man. And far out. All right, folks, be good to yourself. All right, bye-bye.